Welcome, everyone. Let me open the chat real quick and invite you to add your location where you're at so we can know the places we are all inhabiting. I'm in Birmingham. I won't type so I can navigate everything. And I'd also love for you to add to the chat a sentence from one of Cole Arthur Riley's books or an Instagram post that helps you feel less alone in this world. And we'll take about a minute for this. And it's okay if you post it after we move on to the next portion of the program. All right, thank you so much for gathering in silence. I feel like it helps us transition from whatever we were doing before we came here to what we are about to participate in. So I also like to include some deep breaths with my liturgies. The book Breath by James Nestor includes a very short section on how all religions from the beginning of time have prayers that have around a 6-count inhale and a 6-count exhale as the rhythm. So I like to do some deep breaths with a 6-count inhale and 6-count exhale. So I will mute while I do a few of those and invite you to do a few of those breaths too. And then I'll invite Cole Arthur Riley, who's here. Welcome, Cole. Thanks so much for being here with us, to open us with an invocation from her book, Black Liturgies, which is such a beautiful book. I'm so thankful for it, and I'm so glad to be here to celebrate it with you today. And thanks to everyone who's adding stuff to the chat. You can continue to add things as we move forward. All right, let's take a few deep breaths with a 6-count inhale and a 6-count exhale. All right, Cole, when you're ready, you can read an invocation for us.
I'm going to read a poem for our invocation. It's from the section on belonging, and it's called Covalence. Someday I will join them, this table of women with folds in their cheeks and calico floral to their ankles, mumbling and purring at the sizzle of a voice through the radio, graying eyes conveying, bidding all the way to game. A single pendant rests above, no light dispersing beyond their hands, these women who take up the bone to each other's teeth and make sure nothing's there that shouldn't be. In all places, listen for the way your breath sounds as it escapes you.
Thank you. What a lovely way to begin our time together. Thank you so much. I'm not going to waste time, although I don't think we can waste time. I'm not going to take time to introduce Cole. I assume you all know who she is. I have more questions to ask than we'll get to. So I'm going to dive in with the reading and writing life conversation which we will do for about 15 minutes. And I'll try to stay honest on this before we move into the conversation about the book. And making sure I'm not muted. If at any point I'm muted, please tell me, because I get confused sometimes. My first question is, how do writing and reading help you belong to yourself, others, the divine, and the world?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being in this space. Well, my family says, and I now say, what I wrote more than I spoke when I was little. And so if you've read This Your Flesh, you would know I had something called selective mutism, which is an anxiety disorder that made it so that it felt like I couldn't speak in certain settings, but I would have all these notepads and I would pass notes to my father and my sister, and I journaled every day, partly because my father made us, but also just because, it was a way to connect with myself and figure out what was going on. So in that way, writing has always felt like, I don't know, a homecoming, something that connects me to my own interior world, and also this bridge between me and the exterior world, which I was just terrified of on all levels. But for some reason, writing made me brave. Writing made me use my voice in a different way. And then the divine, I mean, I think because writing is such a comfort to me and kind of the clearest I hear my own voice, I think if I was gonna try to connect with the divine at all, it would probably be through writing. I don't think that's the case for everyone, but certainly the case for me, in that I'm most honest on the page. And yeah, I think I possess more belief in writing. E- everything that makes for a good relationship, I think I possess more on a page than I do verbally, which is complicated, but just reality for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. One question that comes to mind is, in your relationships with others, your friends and more intimate relationships, is there more letter writing maybe than others?
Yeah, I'm a big letter writer. I'm a big advocate of letter writing. I try to give my plea in the architecture section to get everyone to start writing letters again. Physical letters, I think I worry about the artifacts that we're losing, because letter writing has become so obsolete through text and whatever. But yes, I'm a big letter writer. And I've kind of sucked some of some people I write letter after letter to, they never reply, until I we're on the phone together and they say, oh, you know what you asked me in that letter, and I'm like, you could write back. But others I've sucked into my habit of letter writing. I think it's so there's so much agency, there's so much, it's hard to put words to. Like when you're writing, an essay, there's a formality, there's a lot required of you. You're very aware of all of the different people who can access it. And there's something, a way that intimacy works in a letter, that this is for one other person, or I mean, I guess on some occasions more than one, but typically there's an intimacy that can be accessed in letter writing that I don't think you get in many other written spaces, which I love.
Yes, I love that too. And I'm glad I'm not the only one who writes letters that people don't respond to. I hate that, but maybe it's more common than I think. It's not just me.
No.
So another question that I'm super interested in, with writers especially, is what other forms of art, all forms and genres of high art, low art, in between art, like nourish you and feed you as a writer and a human?
Yeah. Low art is like functional art, right?
Well, I want reality TV to count. Like I think
Ah,
anyone makes is art. Like so for me, low art is more like what some might call trashy TV or People Magazine or whatever. Um, and we don't need to
I
get into a discussion about what art is, but like I want everything to be allowed.
I love that, Charlotte. Okay. Well, that changes my answer slightly. I was going to
Okay.
say music, and because of some issues I have with my eyes, I've been tapping into music, almost kind of recovering a love for music that I had when I was a teenager. And I think most of us do have, a relationship to music that is just different in adolescence. And slowly over time, we kind of lose that relationship. I've been trying to recover it, um, but mostly listening to one song on repeat for 3 months, three to 4 months at a time. Um, which isn't all that pleasant to the other people in my company, but it's great for me. So right now, the song I'm listening to on repeat is, um, oh, I wish I could. It's called "What If This Is All the Love You'll Ever Have," and it's by Snow Patrol. But low art. I'm a big reality TV person. I don't think many people would intuit this about me. I think I come across as quite serious and like I just read and play chess all day. But I love reality TV, specifically like gaming reality TV or like any TV show that has to do with lying. So Survivor, Big Brother, um, there Traders, which is a new reality TV show that has to do with deception. I'm highly interested in kind of deceptive patterns in humanity, and so I'm drawn to that even, in my downtime.
Okay, I love that answer so much. And I'm tempted to jump ahead to another question that I ask you about the book, but I'm gonna stay in my on my course. Um, Also, what was, I mean, going back to adolescence and your love for music, what's the first like album or artist that you remember um, going to on your own, like out of your own volition and kind of falling in love with on your own?
Um, okay. It would have to be there's two answers. I got these two CDs at the same time. It was the Try Again album by Aaliyah or Romeo Must Die album by Aaliyah, who is no longer with us, but she gave us all she could in the time that she had. She passed quite young, and I was obsessed with that album. But then also Jewel, who was this kind of indie singer. I don't even know how popular she is anymore. I think she's had a bit of a change in paths in terms of the type of music she did. But her original album was just very sad and you know, connected with me and my sadness. So I would just kind of lie there on our carpet listening to it on repeat. Um yeah, Jewel and Aaliyah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I can see Michelle Ortega in our line of people up here. I know music has been huge for her um, in kind of refinding her soul and herself. And so I know she's enjoying this portion of our conversation. So I'm glad I can see you, Michelle, while Cole is talking about this. Um, let's see. Okay. What rituals and practices help you write and have the writing life you want?
Mm. Um, I used to be a lot better at kind of consistency, but lately I've been struggling a lot with momentum. Um, and so I'm lacking a lot of ritual in my life. I will say I journal, I still do journal virtually every day, and that's helpful in that one, it does something to me to write things that I know no one else will see. I think it helps me to access places in myself that I would otherwise hesitate to go. But also, I think it's definitely a site of inspiration, maybe more than I want it to be, but the things that come out of those journaling times when I don't have much expectation and it's really not a site of utility, I'm surprised by what that can lead into in other aspects of my writing. So journaling every day is a ritual, but I don't have a consistent time that I journal. In some of these letters, you'll find they were written horizontal, like in bed. It's very it's very all over the place. And part of that is I'm operating within the limits of a body that is in a lot of pain, or varying amounts of pain from one day to the next, from 1 hour to the next. And so I've had to ease up on a lot of the strictness of rituals and give everything I can when I have it to give, which, is typically in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. under covers, but it's very unpredictable in that way.
Mm-hmm. One thing I love about rituals is that they're always there for us to return to after we've not done them or used them. So when I use the words like rituals or practices, I never mean it in a way of like something that we have to do every day to be the right kind of writer or whatever. So I am a fan of it, of you following the energy and following the openings and closings in your writing practice, even if it's at 2 a.m. And I do love how you write about the body and how you invite your readers to give our attention to our bodies and to honor our bodies in all that they hold and do and go through. So I'm just going to give that shout out to you. I'm sure everyone else here feels the same. So thank you for that. Not too many people are as honest about the body as you, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I am going to transition into conversation about the book, even though I would love to talk to you about writing for hours. Let's see. Okay, let's do at least one of these. Can you read up to 200 words from the book that represents, at least in part, the mind, body, and soul space you're inhabiting right now? Knowing that this is just a glimpse, not a full story.
Yes. This is from the section on doubt. Much of my skepticism is born of an unhealthy distrust, but maybe some of it is also born of wisdom. Often when we demand that someone be sure or think the same thing about God as us, it is because we are terrified to confront our own doubts. We experience their liberation as a threat. In this way, religious certainty can be seen as a product of white supremacy. The tyrant thrives on subjugation, survives by a lack of questioning, by people who act and believe, or say they believe, without challenging those in power. I no longer demand belief where there is tension. If the divine is all-knowing, I suspect they understand why I find it difficult to believe in a God who's loving or kind or listening at all in a world of so much sorrow and injustice. Our doubts are credible, our disbelief human, and I see no need for us to force one another to resolve them under the false promise of salvation or nearness to God. I'm not a person of certainty. It is not a lack of conviction that I feel, rather a complete conviction of divine mystery. I've never heard the voice of God. I've never felt them calling out to me in the pits of despair. I don't know what I think about the Trinity, and I don't know a thing about heaven or hell or the in-between. I know that trees die and come back to life, and it's beautiful. And the right sunset steadies my breath. I know that my sister will answer when I call, and she'll always take the first sip when I don't trust the milk. I know my name and the sound of my grandma's voice speaking it. Maybe this is what belief will always look like for me. Fragments of beauty at rest with divine mystery. My God has another name.
Mm. Thank you. And thank you for putting words around something that so many other people can relate to and connect with. And I know you mentioned this in the introduction of the book, I think, is those who are disturbed by it, I hope they sit with it and can be curious and inhabit a posture of curiosity instead of turning away or being no, I think disruption is good instead of turning away, I guess. So
Mhm.
how has how have people responded to your words on doubt? Have you received any feedback from people? Do you get mean messages from people?
Um, Sometimes, yes. I think in a lot of kind of evangelical Christian spaces, there's a demand for certainty that is just so intense. And I worked at a camp in college for a summer. I don't even know how I ended up working there. And they would like ask their campers, if you were to die tonight, on a scale of 1 to 10, how sure are you that you are going to heaven? And if the child said anything less than a 10, then they would meet with them during the week of that camp. Don't ask me how I ended up in that space. I don't know how I ended up there, but I think what kind of intense fear of uncertainty that even in our children, we're demanding that they be completely sure when probably those children were articulating the most honest and beautiful parts of the human soul is an openness and the unknowability of the divine in some ways, and them finding some way to still be at peace with themselves. And of course, we try to, at some places try to snuff that out as quickly as possible. So I feel a lot of compassion for the angry messages I get in my DMs because I think, where were you formed? What were you formed in that was so terrified of a lack of clarity, of uncertainty, that now my doubt is somehow a threat to you. Um, so I try to think of it that way so that I don't flip out. But yeah, people are disturbed. They think, I'm leading people away from God, and that there are some things you should be clear on. And I personally think, interior honesty is a lot more worthy of protecting for me and in my own spiritual life than any sense of certainty. I say that knowing I have a personality, or I have a story that leads me to kind of hold most things loosely, for better and worse. So I admire some people's degree of certainty, but yeah. And then I'll say there's a whole pocket of people who I think find a lot of relief in it because we're pretending, when you look around and realize, you know, in a room of people, in a church sanctuary, you know, I don't know what percent of us, but no small percent of us are pretending. And part of that pretending is beautiful. I think it's a sacred theater. You act, and that's, to me, no small part of belief is participating, even when that belief isn't there. But some of that pretending, I think, is really sinister, and is a way to kind of escape what's true of you in order to satisfy someone else. And it leads to a lot of loneliness and a lot of alienation. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, unfortunately, so many parents and leaders operate, interact with children in ways that demand fear and demand the response that makes the adults feel safe for whatever reason. And, as a white woman. I just want to say that I notice it the most in white evangelical women who get the most angry when their sureties are disturbed or disrupted. And I know there's a very long history of that, and it's something I've been interested in and something I've been paying attention to. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And that's something that I notice, and it bothers me not as much as it would bother other people of color. But I do blame it on the white American church and the structures of white supremacy and racism that we have been simmering in, and patterns of people being, like you said, scared to admit something might be happening that's not right, that would make their worlds crumble. So sorry for that input, but I do appreciate your words on doubt and how it makes me think about other things too. A lot of your words make me think about other things. So one question I have is, what are your hopes for this book? What are a few scenarios or situations you'd love for readers to bring this book into Black liturgy specifically? And I mean, like, like I have this image of like Lin-Manuel Miranda doing like that very short version of like clip from Hamilton at the White House, with the Obamas. I'm sure that was a dream scenario for that production. Like, what are some dream scenarios or ordinary scenarios or anything in between?
I picture kind of like small groups of people gathering like over dinner or after dinner. I have this image in my head of like a group of people kind of sitting on couches after dinner and maybe picking it up and reading it, talking about their life, and then reading something else that, so not exactly a book club, although those are beautiful, but I have this imagination for it being brought into conversation almost organically, here and there. I think about people, Trisha Hersey, who founded the NAP ministry. She spoke the other night about picturing kind of older women taking it into what is some people call prayer closet. So kind of like going into the closet with it. And that image stuck with me because I spent a lot of time in the closet as a child, kind of sheltering and creating this sense of safety for myself. So I picture it being encountered by individuals as well in kind of a safe way, and thinking of this invisible bridge between us as we're kind of encountering the words together. In terms of like big dreams, I think I lack. I don't have many. I don't have many of those. I'd be content with the former two.
Yeah, the ordinary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe you'll be surprised by some big things later, but I'm a fan of the small things and the ordinary. And one thing, I don't know if I put this in the email to you when I sent you when I was communicating about our gathering, but when I was watching, I think it was the one with Dante, where you were both kind of reading different parts, and you would be like, if you have a copy of your book, open to page X. And then I think he said it a couple times, and it felt like church. I was like, okay, like if you have a copy of your, bulletin or Book of Common Prayer or whatever. And I did kind of have those kind of similar feelings hearing you use those words. And I thought that was interesting to notice and to point out. One other reading that I would love for you to do is up to 200 words from the book that you wrote because you needed to read them.
Okay. I didn't pre-select this.
Okay. It's okay if you want to skip it because I have other questions.
No, it's okay. I will.
Okay.
surely. Okay. This is from the artistry section, the letter on artistry. Of all the ways we've learned to occupy ourselves, art requires a distinct mystical courage, a sacred arrogance that says, not only do I have a right to be here, but I believe my existence will add to the fabric of the universe. I will make, I will craft into existence. This is unbridled power, undeterred agency in a world that suppresses ours. My grandma's art survived by her own belief and despite her own disbelief. When I told her that the poem in the anthology changed me, she smirked softly, dipped her head, and said, "It changed me first." Whatever audacity my grandma's artistry possessed, I hope someday it is found in me, in you, that you and I would allow the artist in us to come awake, that she would not have to tiptoe nightly through our disbelief. The creative dwells in you. I only hope it is given enough voice to cause disruption. This sacred arrogance is a revolution in its own right.
Yes, amen. Thank you. I love the sacred arrogance that you write about and that I've heard you speak about in the Instagram lives a little bit this week. When did you first embrace your sacred arrogance? Do you remember, or is it obviously you still might be doing it?
Still embracing it, but I think probably when I began Black Liturgies, like the online project, I think it takes a lot. And even my friends today, we like sit around and laugh and think, what in the world happened that you decided to start that? It was so impulsive. And I started it anonymously initially because I don't think I would have written anything true if it was attached to me from the beginning. But yeah, we just laugh because it's very unlike me. And yet I think you do have to tap into a kind of the best kind of arrogance to write anything, but especially to try to write toward a collective interior life, to try to translate the human experience to a liturgy that can be read by a collective, I think requires a different kind of confidence to say, oh, not only can I speak my interior world, but I can practice imagination for my grandmas and my great grandmas and my sisters and my friends. And yeah, I think my confidence in that ebbs and flows, but it took a lot of sacred arrogance to begin the project in that way. Yeah.
And it's interesting how you keep returning to others and, you know, the table, people gathered around a table for a meal reading the book, and your work and writing isn't just for you, but it's for those who came before you and those who are coming after you and those who are with you now in whatever capacity. And I do love that kind of relational awareness and communal approach to your art and your words. So I have one more question before we take some questions. And I don't know if I set up Zoom to take questions. I'm so sorry. So y'all can put them in the chat as you like. And if you have any, if you don't have questions, I will keep asking some. But one of my favorite parts of the book, and it's hard to pick a favorite, but I'll just say it's one of my favorites, is the chapter on secrets. And it made me realize one thing I love about your writing is how you tell the truth while also keeping secrets. And the way you navigate the two is truly brilliant. What are some practices and beliefs that help you hold the truth, your secrets, and the tension between the two? Sorry, that's a very long question, but anything you want to say about truth telling and secret keeping, I'm happy to hear.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you. That is very I will remember that affirmation that you just said because I want to do that. Hold both the secrets and the truth telling. Yeah, I think we're all lying, you know, in some ways, and some of those secrets, some of those lies are for our survival. And I
Mm.
think we can have a lot of compassion on them. And I think we've learned a kind of binary way of thinking about secrets and the human interior, where you know, you hear things like secrets make you sick, um, which I agree, some secrets do, you know, can do awful things. But you know, I say in the book, sometimes a secret can save your life. And um, I don't know if I quoted her in the book, but I wish I had. Amani Perry, who's a historian, just a brilliant writer. She, in an interview I watched her once, she said, "You never tell all the secrets when you're trying to get free." And I
Mm.
thought that was so subversive because there's this kind of narrative about pursuing authenticity. It's a lot of people's kind of core value, I think, is being authentic, which I love to some degree, but I think our language of authenticity has kind of devolved into share it all, and my relationship to you is measured by the extent to which I bare my soul or I end up crying on your lap. You see this in a lot of kind of small group spaces, be it Christian or otherwise, some idea that success has reached once everyone's kind of crying together. And you know, I would go to these small groups in college, and someone would say, "Oh, it was so good, so and so cried." And I'm like, okay, there's something good to that, but also is that the only measure of intimacy we have is this hyper exposure at times. So I'm in a lot of favor of reclaiming some secrets. I think some are good and mysterious and beautiful, but also just interrogating what it is in us that needs to remain hidden for our survival, what it does to have parts of us remain hidden, who are the people that can hold, you know, certain parts of us. And I'm interested in this dance of withholding and giving and not letting it be reduced to one thing. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm glad that section resonated with you.
Yes, it did. And it's made me think a lot about the secrets I have and the secrets I keep. And honestly, I have a lot of like God and I have a lot of secrets. And it's made that chapter made me think about that because it's made me realize I'm kind of more intimate with God than I thought because there are all these secrets that we laugh about and stuff. And I know that might sound woo-woo and weird, but and then there are other secrets that aren't quite as super spiritual. And yeah, like who holds my secrets? And I mean, most people who know me know that I appreciate writers and books, especially people who are writing about spirituality, who give me something new to chew on. Like I get so bored of hearing the same thing over and over again. And your book definitely gives me a lot of new things to think about and contemplate. And for now, I'm sure it will change, but the secret chapter is the one that's giving me the most. So thank you for that. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for giving me more ideas to think about. So Catherine has added a question. Thank you very much for your powerful words. How long have these words been brewing within you? Is there any specific origin you are aware of? And Catherine, I assume you mean this specific book and the Black Liturgies Instagram account that was the beginning of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks for your question, Catherine. I think for a while I I read a lot for better and worse. There's some escapism there, but I read a lot, and it's hard not to read the things that I'm reading without some degree of it kind of making a home in you in a way. Um, And so maybe in college is really where it began. I did read a lot as a child, but mostly like Goosebumps books and um, even Toni Morrison. I didn't even encounter Toni Morrison until I was in college. James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Alice Walker. Zora Neale Hurston. I had encountered none of them before college. I can't even remember what we were reading in high school, but not them. But when I encountered Black literature, specifically the Black novel in college, I think it opened up a lot in me. Whereas up to that point, I was a quiet child, so I was really near to my own interior life, but not very interested in what that meant for the world around me, what that meant for what was happening in someone else's kind of inner world, or what someone else's fears, desires. I think I was pretty self-absorbed in my introspection before college, and the Black novel, as we know fiction does, was a bridge for me into deeper empathy and imagining, um and led to all of these thoughts that seem like, can at times feel like they came out of nonfiction reading, but really most of it is born of fiction. And I've found kind of essays and nonfiction to accompany the thoughts that fiction made a home in me first. Yeah.
I have one follow-up question before you answer Lori Beth's question about the process of deciding the title for your book, which you may or may not have had any input in. I hope you did. Can you speak a bit about magical realism and how it helps you? I mean, I don't want does magical real I'll ask it this. Does magical realism hold truth for you with regard to your spirituality? Does it help people like know that some certain things are true that you know that you've experienced?
Yes. So my first book, This Year Flesh, it has I think a lot of magic realism in it, and no one has really ever asked me about it. Mostly people kind of just ignore it, which I think is so interesting, that maybe that's kind of hard for people to access or understand. But I'm I weave together all kinds of weird, strange things that aren't really happening. My dad levitating, and um, of course, there's a lot of myth, and my editors as well for This Here Flesh. There's not much myth in Black Liturgies, because I have a secret dream about writing an entire book of myths. But This Here Flesh, there's a fair amount of myths in it. And even my editors, like, I didn't have it in I didn't have it in any part of my proposal that I'd be just telling these strange stories that I was making up. Um, it wasn't in any proposal, but they kind of embraced it with open arms and didn't have much question about it, didn't really make me defend it in any way, which is great. But when I think about my kind of spirituality in my home growing up, I'm not from a religious family or a religious home. And when I was writing This Here Flesh, I was trying to think, how do I honor that? I'm telling the stories of my father and my grandma. I don't want this thing to be reduced to Christianity, when I think that's one sphere of my spirituality, but my spirituality can't be defined altogether by Christianity. And so I started to think, what spirituality did my family possess? And myth and kind of magic, my sister and I mixing potions from expired condiments out back and in our basement. And of course, you know, my family, the Arthurs side of the family, we tell myths and we pass them on to our children. And from the time I was 4 or 5, I fully believed I had unicorn blood because of a birthmark on me. And we pass on all kinds of, I think, delightful and mischievous things that ultimately have meaning. They're of our own imagination, but also of deep meaning. And I want to practice that with my own spirituality. I want to be open to magic. Some people would call that kind of mysticism, or they're a mystic. I'm like magic plus mystic. I'm happy with. You know, it's good for me, I think, to have the strange, the queerness, nothing fully precise. Did that happen or didn't that happen? I think that's what magic realism does.
Yeah. I'm so glad I asked that follow-up question. Thank you. So Lori Beth asked about the title, and then I want to get to Kelly's question too, and then we will have to close, and we're going just a few minutes over, y'all. So sorry. Is it okay, Cole, to answer those two questions? And okay.
Yeah. The title, Black Liturgies, is born of the project, and it came to me at the same time that the idea came to me. So it's not all that exciting. When I say it was impulsive, it really was me in bed, and I turned to my partner and said, I think I'm going to start this thing called Black Liturgies. And then he said, what's that? And I said, I'm gonna like try to connect spiritual practice with Black literature, and all that to say, it all happened at once for me. The idea, I didn't have to spend a whole lot of time naming it. But the word liturgy, the Greek is translated to mean work of the people, or work for the people, work of the people, which feels right for the project of this kind of collective, this collective project. And then what was the other question, Charlotte?
First, let's do Tanya's question, and then we have one more from Kelly. Tanya Davis asks or says, thank you for writing this here flesh. It was my church during COVID. Can you talk a little about how you practice awe, or what is a good daily awe practice?
Well, it becomes a lot easier if you have children around you. Because like most things are miracles to children. It's like, oh my gosh, there's mayonnaise on this burger. This is amazing. Like they're just everything is magic to a child, and so that helps. I just rode the elevator with a child. I was in Philly earlier today and was in a hotel and rode the elevator with a child who kind of jumped as the elevator was landing, which apparently you're not supposed to do, but I did as a child, and remembered that moment where you're kind of suspended for just a little bit longer as the elevator is coming down. And I was kind of marveling at that. Children help if you don't have access to children to kind of witness. So I mentioned I spend a lot of time in bed, and I am fortunate to have a window right kind of next to me. And so I can hear a lot. There's a giant oak tree outside of my window, and um what I listen a lot to kind of ground me. I think the barn swallows, for whatever reason, have not all retreated south. I don't understand why. So I'll listen to the barn swallows in the oak tree outside of my window. Not everyone has an oak tree. So can you witness, I don't know, architecture? Can you witness a building, even a dilapidated one? I want to believe, and certainly have experienced some degree of beauty, and even the things we make with our own hands, even a busy city street, the face of a person you love, really taking in the lines and the creases, I think is a beautiful practice.
An image that just came to mind is that omelet from The Bear.
Yes, that is
The making of the omelet and like that whole scene.
yes. If you all have not seen The Bear, I cannot recommend it enough. TV show of the year, maybe of the decade for me. But yes, that beautiful scene where she's, going this all of the labor and intentionality, and it's this moment of pause in the midst of such chaos. That's perfect. Yeah.
And like wanting to nourish someone using very ordinary, simple ingredients. Thank you for that answer, for that response. Kelly says, Cole, I so loved your Advent series this past year. As a chronic pain girly, it was one of the few Christmas practices that I was able to show up for. I'd love for you to share anything about how your writing and liturgies and breath prayers are ways for you to practice spiritual belonging, even when a lot of things are not accessible due to pain and disability. Thank you for that question, Kelly.
Yeah. I don't find myself in many spiritual spaces these days. because I have to be quite careful and make careful choices about the risks that I take. And so I do think writing this book for me was a way to connect, was kind of me reaching out and um wanting this physical artifact for the people who have experienced Black liturgies in the digital space. And digital spaces can be a place of access for disabled and chronically ill people, but they're certainly not made with us in mind. They're not made for us. And so I like the idea of having something physical for us. I also I don't know, I think it's worth saying that the, the reason, well, I shouldn't say the reason, this book wasn't that late, but it took me a while to write it because writing itself is costly. And I think anyone that is both a writer and lives with chronic pain can understand. Everyone says that, you know, writing is agony, writing is costly, but I mean a very literal cost to my body at times, my hands, and specifically my eyes, that is this constant negotiation between my body and the art that I want to create. And it leads to, it's led to a lot of self-compassion for myself and embracing some of those limits and not rushing to kind of resolve them or not pushing past them. I missed 2 deadlines for the first time probably in my life. I do not like to miss a deadline, and I did on this book. But I needed to have that fidelity to my own body and what was happening to my own body. And I hope that the honesty in some of the letters will kind of be this, there will be arms receiving that on the other side that need to hear that same self-compassion and know what it is to kind of spend your days in between, you know, in between bed and a bathroom, going back and forth and back and forth. I hope it reaches those people.
I believe it will, and thank you for wanting it to reach those who have to give more attention to their bodies and the limits and the pain. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cole, for this. Emily added a word of a few sentences of encouragement, and I will be sending all these to you, Cole, via email. All of the words of I don't remember what I called them in the liturgy. Words of life, words of something, comfortable words. I think I stole from the Book of Common Prayer, maybe, or encouraging words. It doesn't matter what I called it, and I might tweak it as we move forward. Before we do a benediction, I would love for the participants here to add a few words of what you want to carry with you as you leave this space, maybe something you've received from this conversation and what you hope to take forward with you. And again, I will send all of this to you via email and to everyone, to all the people who registered. These words can be a sort of prayer for us and for Cole, and or a meditation if you don't like to use the word prayer. So let's take a minute or so for that. And I will keep the Zoom room open even after we close for anyone who wants to add anything to the comments before you leave. And no pressure with adding anything. So again, a few words describing what you want to take with you from this time together. And I think I'm going to have to change the time for all future thoughtful readers gatherings to an hour instead of 45 minutes, because 45 minutes might just be too short. again, I'll stay here and keep it open for anyone who wants to add to the comments. Cole, will you please read a benediction for us from the book?
Yes. Also, hi, Teresa. I didn't recognize you at first, but I just saw your name and I made the connection. Good to see you. This is a benediction from the section on mortality. May you depart in peace, with reverence for the body, however frail, with compassion for your interior life, however complicated, and with surviving memory for all of the days of your mortal soul. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. Cole, do you have any words before you leave?
Oh, thank you for being in this space with me and each other tonight. It was good to gather in the intimacy of this kind of smaller group. So I've benefited from it. Thank you for listening.
Good. I'm so glad. And I will also, for those of you who don't have the book yet, I will send information about the book in the email that I send to y'all with more resources. All right, those of you who need to leave, please leave. Sorry for going over. Thank you, Cole, for your generosity of time and presence.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, Alyssa, if you want to add anything to the chat, you can do so. Or if you've gone, I don't want to stay here. I'm going to stop the recording.
I'm typing. But you know what? It's not really that big a deal. I mean, I'm just like, you know.
Please type it because I want her to receive all these words. But I'm going to go on and stop the recording now.
Yeah. No worries. Okay. I'm trying to be succinct, but that's hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.